Good morning, everybody. This is the tech session, the second tech session on Pertronix. Today we are in my garage. My name is Reinout Vogt. I'm with the Peachtree MG Registry. We are here in my garage. It's quite a large garage. Can you zoom around a little bit? We have here the subject of today, a MG Midget 1500. Further in my garage, there's some space for other cars. I have my MGC project right here, and in the background is my MG M-Type. And on the left on the wall is part of my collection of MG models. And one of that is on MGR. And we are here together with a little Zoom crew. Let me introduce you to everyone. The camera is being operated by Aviva Hoffman. You won't see her because she's walking around and maneuvering and handling the camera. We have Jack Orkin here, who brought some of the heat heater that we have here. Jack is a first owner of an MG Midget, so his midget is the topic of today. It is good to have an expert here. Then we have Oliver Hoffman, who was in charge of the donuts for today, and he did very well, I have to say. Then we have Mr. John Miller, who is the owner of this blue 1979 MG Midget. About a year ago, our first Zoom tech session was at Neil, and Neil installed a Pertronix in a car and then set the timing with a timing light. Unfortunately, that part did not get recorded. And unfortunately, which is good, is that Neil is the MG or British car expert here in the area. So for Neil, these things are a piece of cake, and he makes it look real easy. He says, oh yeah, you take this screw out and flip, things are done. In real life, it is not so easy. So it just seemed to be a very good idea that John Miller, who purchased the Pertronix, share his experience with buying it and installing it, and then we'll see if we can get the video aimed at his engine bay and get the timing right with John's new timing light. After that, we'll quickly check a couple of the valve clearances on his car, and maybe we'll walk around it and do a few other things. So without holding you up too much, let's start. And I will give the microphone to John, and then John will be talking about the Pertronix.
And I did want to give a caveat here. I'm a novice at this mechanicking stuff, and almost all of y'all know more about working on a car than I do. But I had my car in to see Neil last year. He and Robert did a complete interior overhaul, and they put a Weber carburetor conversion on this. I had the stock carburetor, and the reason we did that was because I had a cracked exhaust manifold, the stock manifold, and it was the second one that had been installed on there. So Neil said, well, you can install a header, but you have to have a new intake manifold, because the stock exhaust and the stock intake manifold fit together, but you can't put a header on with this intake manifold. So I got a Weber, and it's got an electronic choke on it, and I dearly love the thing. But we're here to talk about the Pertronix today, and we'll get into some other stuff. When I got the car back from Neil, it was running well, but I noticed it had some hesitation at some, and so I stopped by to see Neil, and he says, I think you got a bad condenser, because it clearly was not a fuel problem, it was an electronics problem. So we opened up the distributor, and what it was the points needed to be set. And so he said, you mean we've never installed a Pertronix on this car? And I've been going to see Neil for a long time now. And I said, no, we never, what is a Pertronix? He says, well, that's an electronic ignition system. And the conversion is very simple. And I looked at him, and he knows what a novice I am. I said, Neil, do you think that I can install this Pertronix myself? And he kind of looked at me and he tilted his head and drew circles on the ground with his toe. And he says, I think you could do it. And so that began a journey that I'm glad I took, but it was a journey. First off, which Pertronix unit do you buy? This is important. My distributor is a Lucas 45D4. And I was having this conversation with Jack. He says, oh no, you had an electronic distributor. And I said, no, this was the original distributor. And I learned from Moss and from Pertronix that yes, they did put the non-electronic distributor in some of the 79 midgets. Well, if you go to the Moss catalog, or if you order from Moss, you're going to get the Pertronix kit that is for the Lucas electronic version. It's like a 45DE or a 45DM, something like that. Mine is a 45D4. Well, John, how do you know that? It's stamped on the side of the distributor. So I needed to know that you really have to be careful which Pertronix kit you're going to get. Let's see. I've got some photos. You want to push the photos, we can look at some stuff. The first one is a photograph of the inside of the distributor with the points. Okay, well, this is probably easier anyway. This is a set of points. And when you go to install a Pertronix on this car, you take the whole plate out. Everything comes out that you can get out. Something else I wanted to talk about is the rotor button. This is a rotor. And y'all probably already knew this, but if you've got a rotor that's got a rivet right here, you need to replace it because sooner or later it's going to fail. But this is a good one. And I've also got a newer version of this that's red in my car. We'll see that in just a minute. But this is what it looks like when it's installed in the distributor. And this is a 45D4 distributor. This is without the rotor, so you can see a little bit more detail in there. This is an important photograph. This is the wrong Pertronix for a 45D4 distributor. And if you'll notice, there's a magnet gizmo that slides down over the cam. And this one will not slide down far enough for the magnet unit, for the sensor to pick up this thing turning. And I tried and tried, and I talked to Pertronix and I talked to Moss. Moss was really not a whole lot of help. They had a technician out in California that would talk to me, but it bless his heart. Okay. This is the right Pertronix unit for mine. That other one is for an electronic distributor. And this one is for a mechanical distributor, the 45D4. If you'll notice this, this magnet ring that slides down over the cam inside the distributor, it actually has 4 sides on it, and it slides right down over the cam so that this sensing unit can pick it up. And notice there are a couple of things here. You know how I said that the whole plate's got to come out? Well, it does. And this will only fit in there one way, and you have to make sure that a pin on the advance lines up underneath it. Notice that there's a wire here. That's just a ground wire on the inside of this. And then these 2 wires come out of the side of the distributor, and they go to your jack just to your coil. See, I told you I didn't know anything. Okay, they go to the coil. I want to tell you a little part of my journey that has to do with installing this thing, because there's a rubber device that helps. It's a grommet that goes in the side of the distributor so that these things are not up against metal, and it holds the wires securely in place as they go through the side of the distributor. That rubber grommet is what we'll call a tight fit. And if you take these wires and put it inside of it and then try to feed that through the side of your distributor, you're going to run into a tug of war that you really don't want to do, because you really can't pull on these wires very hard or the wires will come apart. So, well, what do you do in that event? Well, there's another piece of material that Neil introduced me to, and it's called anti-seize. And it's the most magical stuff I ever found. It is the nastiest stuff in the world. But if you need to have something lubricated so that you can work it through a tight squeeze, that anti-seize is the thing to go for. It's wonderful. I actually use it on a bird feeder to keep the squirrels from climbing up the bird feeder.
That's a good tip.
And it has completely baffled the squirrels.
Did you take notes?
Okay, I'm going to show you this other photograph. That's the inside of the distributor with the proper unit installed. This is the inside of the distributor with the rotor installed. And I did go ahead and get a new rotor. I realized I didn't need one, but what are they, about $6 or something like that. But that was absolutely the least expensive part of this exercise. I also put a new distributor cap on it. I'm pretty sure it was the original distributor cap. It's a 1979 car, and I just decided it was time. I think we could go around to the side of the car. Viva, I don't know if you want to show. We've got the valve cover off right now because we're gonna check the valves here in a minute. And I think the valve clearances are about right, but we'll see. I also put new spark plug wires on this thing, and since it's been 25 or 30 years since the spark plugs were replaced, I decided, what the heck, let's go ahead and replace the spark plugs whether they need it or not. And the truth is, the spark plugs were actually in pretty good shape. But if you're going to replace spark plugs on a midget like this, number one, you can't get a spark plug socket on that thing because the clearance against the back of the alternator is too close. So what I had to do was to take the alternator and loosen the belt and swing that, swing the alternator belt off of it. And then I had to swing the alternator back out. Aviva, if you'd like to just show over here, if you can get around.
Okay, all right, all right. Come
And,
yeah, okay.
because I think there's plenty of room for you.
All right. All right, what are we talking about?
All right. So this is the number one plug, and I had to swing the alternator out of the way over this way to even get to it. I'll take off the heater hose so we can get a little bit more room here. I'll just remove it. And then this is, I'm going to take the top off the distributor, and me not knowing any better, I had to number my my spark plug wires to be able to get it back right. Some of y'all know that number one, number four, you know, the fire and order and which one goes where. I do not any longer trust myself, so I numbered everything.
That's pretty smart.
I use fluorescent acrylic paint. I tried using a silver paint marker and it came right off. And this has not come off yet. So this is the inside of my distributor. This is the rotor. This is the magnet. And you see that the inside of the magnet fits right down over the cam. So I'm going to put all of this back together now. I do hope that I can drive this car away from here today. There we go. It's fully seated. Pushed it down as far as it would go. And there's not very much clearance between the side of the magnet and the sensor, but it apparently is enough because it's working. And I don't know of any problem with it. I guess I ought to look at it and see where it goes. Okay, so the rotor's back in place. This is the rubber grommet that goes through the side of the distributor. And if you look at it, it looks nasty. Well, that's anti-seize. And that's my best friend in the world. I use it all over the place. This is the ground wire, and it has to be attached. And as you saw when I had the points in my hand over there, that whole plate section comes out and gets replaced. Then over here, we have the coil, and the red wire goes to the positive and the black wire goes to the negative. And that's how all that works. If you get a Pertronix kit, the instructions are the most confusing thing I've ever seen in my life. It talked about, because down here is a ballast and there's some other stuff, and I don't know what that stuff does, but the instructions in the Pertronix box tell you that you've got to connect such and such wire if you have such and such a wire of it. So I called Pertronix and he says, oh, don't worry about all that. All you do is you connect the red wire to the positive pole and the black wire to the negative pole on your coil. And that's all you do. Don't worry about all that other stuff. And I said, well, thank you. And if I won't go into my relationship with Moss and Pertronix, but I will tell you that I'm not sending Christmas cards to either one of them. Okay, well, I'm going to put the distributor back together here, I hope. Okay. It all clicked. I think that means that it's back together. And I've watched enough people who have good sense do this that I tend to check all my wires and make sure the spark plug wires and the coil wire are all connected properly before I stop doing what I'm going to do. And so that's the Pertronix, and I'm completely pleased with it. I don't, you know, it was running okay before with the points, but you know, another 40 years from now, I was going to have to replace the points again. So why not go ahead and put a Pertronix on it and catch up with some of the rest of the MG Car Club. So that's the story on that. And
Have we have any questions or any comments?
Do you have questions?
Not yet.
okay. I guess we're ready to play with the valves.
Yes. I noticed a little bit of a problem here because we took the valve cover off to look at the valve clearance. And if we start the engine to set the ignition timing, you're going to get oil all over the place splattering around. So either we do the valves first and then set the timing, or we put the valve cover back on real quick.
Why don't we do the valves first? 'Cause
Okay.
It won't take but a minute.
Yeah, but then still you want to have the, no, put this,
And then I'll put the cover back on and then we can do the timing.
yeah, but you want to, then we have to do all the valves. And we need to only do, can you, is the gasket was still good, right? You
Yeah,
said.
the gasket's good.
Put it back on just for a few minutes and then it doesn't have to be real tight. Then I think it is better if we do it this way, easier. We stay on one topic and it is easier because then we can just do one or two valves.
Yeah, and let people know that
Stand close to it so they
it's got a
can hear you.
silicone gasket on it. And so this is supposed to be reusable. If it is reusable, that's all well and good. If it's not, we'll find out here in a minute.
Well, while John is putting the valve cover back on, as you know, there is many people who have opinions about Pertronix. There's people who like them and use them, and there's people who do not like them and do not use them. People like them because they hardly ever break, and people don't like them because when they break, it's impossible to repair them. So it's sort of the same reason that people either like or don't like them. I have no opinion. I'm fine with it. Make up your own mind. On the Zoom call today is Bud Kruger, who emailed me the other day that he has had a Pertronix in his MGTV for something like 5 years or 10 years without any problem. He is a satisfied user. He operates a MGT series website, and there's pictures and information about the Pertronix there too. And I think that information, although it is probably a different Lucas distributor, the basics is the same and it'll work the same. So we are not having any opinion about whether Pertronixes are good or bad. There's just as many people that like them, and I think it may be a smart move just to try it if you want to experiment with it, like John Miller did, and he seems to be content so far. So everything is good. Oliver, can you take from the toolbox a big screwdriver?
That's what I was looking for.
Or on the corner there, on the corner of my tool, yes. And give that to John. The other thing is that if you the Pertronix unit, this is what John took from his 45 whatever number distributor, and on there you see a capacitor or condenser, same thing, different word, and the points. Both of these items are replaced by the Pertronix. The Pertronix is an electronic thing. That little black box on the underneath the distributor cap is actually the replacement for the capacitor, and the little magnet operates an electronic switch that is a replacement of the points. That it's all sealed. There's nothing you can do about it. If you operate regular breaker points, one of the adjustments is the gap of the points, which sets something that is also known as the dwell angle. That all goes away when you have the Pertronix. They just sit there and fire, and no more capacitor, no more points. One of the advantages of Pertronix could very well be that nowadays condensers have poor quality. Some of the points have poor quality. I've had points that this little red actuator just broke off after a couple miles. With the cheaper parts that come out of Moss sometimes, and people always refer to them as cheap Chinese parts, which is actually wrong. They are cheap parts. Moss can order high quality parts from China too, that just cost more. The Chinese can manufacture fantastic equipment, but then the cost advantage goes away. So modern points, and in particular condensers, is dubious at best nowadays. So it may be a good idea just from that perspective to go to the Pertronix. So in the meantime, John finished putting the valve cover back on, so we don't have oil leaks. Let's now try.
And there's something else
Let's now try to set the timing, which is hard to see on the video, maybe, but we'll see how it works. And then I think John will show another gizmo that he likes a lot.
Yeah, I want to show off something that I use all of the time. And it's a gizmo that has a snout on it with a camera. And Viva, I don't know if you can get in there and get a look at this. Actually, I'm going to turn this. There we go. Let's see. Yes.
Nice.
And this is a camera that allows me to look for the stuff that I've dropped down into the bottom of my engine. And there's an attachment for the camera that has a magnet. And there's another one that's got a mirror that gives you a right angle look at stuff. Now, what I'm going to try to do is to show the, hang on just a second right now. I'm going to try to show on the side of the distributor where it says the, and Aviva, if you can look at this camera.
Okay.
Are you able to get up on the camera?
How's it look, Jack?
Yeah. And so that's where it says 45D4. That's actually important because if it says something else, you got to really be careful. Okay, now I'm going to show some timing marks. Can you feed that in there?
You see?
Yeah, it's kind of washed out. Those are the timing marks that are right up against the pulley. And I'm going to, it's kind of washing out. Somewhere on that pulley are, oh, there, that's a good view of it. And do you see the dot right between the 8 and the 12? Well, that dot is the mark on that timing mark that shows where the other mark, which is on the pulley, needs to line up when the timing is correct. So Reinout, do you happen to see the mark on the pulley?
No.
Okay,
It's
then
on
it
the
must
other
be
side.
underneath. We'll have to wiggle this thing around. Why this is important for me to talk about is how are you going to find the timing mark that's on the pulley on a midget? You almost need a microscope because on a pulley, it's typically a groove that's cut into the edge of the pulley. On the midget, they decided, for whatever reason, to make this almost microscopic in size. And so I really had to search and search for it, clean everything, search some more. And then I called Neil, and Neil told me, John, you almost need a microscope. So I kept looking. Finally, I found the thing. And then I got some of this fluorescent paint, and I painted that mark so that when we put this timing light on this thing and we run it, it'll show up. Because if you try to do this without having the fluorescent paint on it, you'll lose all confidence in yourself because you'll think you're going blind. Any luck yet?
No.
Do you see it yet?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think you can find it with this?
Yes.
And by the way, I understand these cameras now.
Can you see it?
Okay, do you see the timing marks on the pulley? Well, those are supposed to line up, and I don't know how we will ever do this when we're actually setting the timing so that you can see it, because I have been near a device, an engine like this, when somebody dropped a wrench into the fan, and I've seen the wrench come off the top of the come off the bottom of the hood and hit somebody in the mouth, and that's not what I want to do here today. But I'll tell you, if you don't have one of these cameras, and if you're going to work on an automobile, you need to go to Home Depot or somewhere in Amazon and get one. I think the newer one's Bluetooth to a computer. This is an old one, but like I said, I use it all the time. Right now, do we need to open the bay door to run this, or are you willing to risk a minute of carbon monoxide?
You can open the door a little bit.
Very long.
It's not going to take very long. So if there was somebody from OSHA watching this, and that should be adequate. And so there are two different RPM settings that you need to be paying attention to. We need to have, can you see this? There's a wonderful sticker on the inside of my car, and it says timing at idle 10 degrees before top dead center. 10 degrees before top dead center. Well, 10 degrees before top dead center is where those two marks are that I've painted on the timing mark and on the flywheel, or the pulley for the fan. But it needs to be at how many RPMs?
800.
800 RPMs. So there is an advanced version of that, what Reinout's going to do is tell me to increase the RPMs up to what, 3,000?
Yes.
And this timing light that I've got gives RPMs, and it also has a setting that Reinout knows how to operate, so that you'll be able to advance the time inside the machine to that amount, so that once again the marks that we've painted will be correct. So let me know when you're ready to roll.
Right now,
Okay. And I think I've gotten most of the stuff out of the way so that it doesn't go flying all over the room when we do.
Where should I stand with the camera? Any suggestions?
and while John is starting the car, can you hear me? You noticed on the timing marks that unlike most of the MGB engines that have a timing mark in a similar place, but the top dead center is the big tooth of the little edge, and then all the marks are 5 degrees and 2 degrees before top dead center. And this 1500 Spitfire engine, somewhere one of the middle marks is actually 0, top dead center, and the marks go beyond that to positive angle. I have no idea why Triumph had timing marks that go after top dead center, because no engine is timed for the ignition or anything ever after top dead center. So be careful if you're used to working on a regular, I think all midgets and certainly all MGAs and MGBs, where the last timing mark is top dead center. The last timing mark is +8 or +10 or something like that. So 0 is in the middle. He has marked, John has marked the 10 degrees before top dead center with the highlighter. So now we're going to run the engine one more time and then fire up the timing light and see. Hopefully we can show that the flashing and matching up of the timing lights inside the engine. So I think the video.
I think he will be a better one to do this. Why don't you just keep going? Now I'll try to adjust the RPM.
All righty, let's go.
You tell me. By the way, did y'all notice that this thing starts right up?
Oh, yeah.
970. But I don't see it flashing right now. There it goes. We are at 900. A little fast. Over on this screen, this timing light, it has a selection for 2 and 4 cycle. Of course, we are on 4 cycle. It is now in RPM mode, which means that the engine is idling at almost 1,000 RPM, which is a little higher than the recommended mark. And if I push this button, which looks like a question mark, I do not know why that is, this side of the timing light starts flashing, triggered exactly on the ignition timing moment. So now we get a stroboscope, and if you take the camera, can you look from that side and see the timing mark or not?
Let's see.
I do not know if you can see it. It's swapping around a little bit right now. Go to 2,000 RPM. We are now going to check what the ignition timing is at 2,000 RPM. Tell me when you take it now. More. The idea was that he first checked the ignition timing, and John's label says 10 degrees advance at 800 RPM. John's car at this point is idling at 950 RPM. So the advance was actually maybe 11 or 12 degrees. Then we went up to 3,000 RPMs, and I'm not sure, I wasn't able to see on the video if you could see the dots line up again. This device here, I can set the advance here. So I had set this at 30 degrees advance to make the dots align again when John was revving it up. And John's ignition is set perfectly. I'm not sure, the factory never had specifications of 32 degrees at 3,000 RPM. But lately, I hear experts like Barry and John Twist and Glenn all talk about forget, and Neil, not to forget him. I say forget the advance at idle. It is at high speed when your engine really needs to run proper and powerful. So they all say go to about 32 degrees at 3,000 RPM. Not many old distributors can have exact 10 degrees at 800 RPMs and 32 at 3,000. So it is always a little bit a degree off on the one side and a degree off on the other side. If you are at idle and you are with this particular engine about 10 degrees before top dead center at idle speed, and about 30 to 34 degrees at 3,000 RPM, then your engine is running quite well. The reason why we say 3,000 RPM, not because 3,000 RPM is a magical number, but 3,000 RPM is the number where the advance is about maximum in these Lucas distributors. Going higher RPM will not advance any further, and some reach maximum advance at 2,500, 2,600, 2,800. So 3,000 is just a safe number for maximum advance in most cases, 32 degrees. So having done that, I think it shows that Neil was right when John asked him, do you think I can get the Pertronix installed myself? John did. The proof is here. John drove his car here this morning and he'll be driving his car home. The ignition fires. The ignition is dead on timing. So we should be all right, John. You can drive home. So give us a few seconds, then we'll take the valve cover off and see what the valve clearance is. Now, the valve clearance is probably, it says right here on John's sticker. It says valve clearance 10 thousandths cold. Of course, the engine is not really cold anymore. It's not really hot either. So I think we'll be close enough to at least monitor if there's a big difference between them. How we do that. There's no connection between the valve clearance and the Pertronix. It just so happens that when I talked to John, said, well, you know, when we are talking about the ignition and doing the Zoom session, do you think it is a good idea just to check the valves? There's nothing to do with the Pertronix, totally different topic, but we can do it. It's back on the table, I think. I'm sorry. All right. John is going to take the valve. We'll get going with the valve clearance.
I'm just going to let you do the talking.
All right.
And you might let folks know that this has one of those silicone gaskets on it, and there's oil leaking from this engine somewhere, but it's not at the valve cover. Not so as I can tell anyway. And this is a reusable silicone gasket. Thank you.
The valve mechanism of a 1500 MG Midget engine, which came from, at that time, partner company in the BMC or BLMC network, Triumph. It looks all very much the same, I think, like a Midget engine. You have valves, 8 of them, cylinder 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhaust, inlet, and so on. And the adjustment is right here, just like on an MG Midget engine or a MGB engine. The thing is that down in the engine is something called a camshaft, and it pushes these levers to operate the valves. And you want to have that the valve is fully closed when it is not, when it is supposed to be, and you want to have it open when it is fully open when it is supposed to be. And in order to achieve that, there needs to be a little bit of play in here, loose. So you make sure that the valve is totally closed, and you can slide a feeler gauge between these surfaces at the proper timing. And it just so happens that this engine says it has to be 10 thousandths. And for many years, we all used feeler gauges. This is a set of feeler gauges. It has different sizes in there, and we used, all of them used 10 thousandths to do this. Lately, the last time we had a tech session at Barry Rosenberg, Barry introduced a different kind of feeler gauge. And this is what they call a go, no-go feeler gauge. To set something at 10 thousandths, you select a feeler gauge that says 9 thousandths and 11 thousandths. That means that the machine part here is 9 thousandths and the unmachined part here is 10 thousandths. So if the 9 thousandths goes through and the 11 thousandths does not, you know that you are at exactly 10 thousandths. So this is actually the first time I bought a set, but the first time that we're gonna play with it. I have John play with it.
I think you're
all right.
You have to be better at this than I am.
All righty, here we go with the valves. Can you put it in fourth or third gear, John? To set the valves on our engines, you have to know when the valve is supposed to be closed all the way, and there is play in the rocker. I think these are called rockers because they rock this way to do that. So there's a simple math. You have to know math to do this right, and the math is the 9. You do valve 1 when valve 8 is all the way depressed. You do valve 4 when valve 9 is all the way depressed.
Valve
you do
5.
valve 2 when number 7 is all the way in. So you roll the engine around in the garage in fourth gear, and now we watch. You see this one here, number 8, is on its way or in or out. We'll see where it goes. You see number 8. Can you see? Show this, Aviva. Number 8 here. When I roll the engine back and forth, it comes up, which means that it is almost on its bottom end. You see now it came up. I go down the other way, and
It's going down.
it goes down, and then
It's going up.
comes up again. So right
At
here
the bottom, yep, that's it.
at the bottom,
That's it.
I should have clearance of 10 thousandths on, this is number 8. 8, 9 minus 8 is 1. So I should now be checking valve number 1. And this thing is not going through, which means that it is a little tight, which could be because it is warmer than cold. So I do not really want to, we'll adjust it just for the heck of it. These numbers are a little hard to read. 9, 11. Here is 8 and 9. Wow.
It's pretty tight.
Yes, it is pretty tight. It is pretty tight. Let's check to make sure that
That's
one
all
is
the way
in
down.
before we mess it up. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So this one is a little tight, which is good. Then we can show you how this goes, and then we'll do the rest outside of the Zoom meeting. I'll take back my number 9 and 11 feeler gauge, and I loosen that nut a little bit. You have the screwdriver, John?
Yeah.
You loosen this lock nut, and then when the lock nut is loose, with the screwdriver in here, you can increase and decrease. You see it going there?
See this right here?
You can adjust the play here. So now we put in the feeler gauge, and now we close it a little bit, and you see it goes in.
You might
the
want,
9,000s go through, and when I hit 10,000 or 11,000s, it stops. It can't go any further. So we are right on the edge here of where we have to be 10,000s. Now we have to lock this thing again, and without moving the screwdriver. So I moved it a little bit, and I'm pretty sure you're close. Try. Oliver is operating the feeler gauge. Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly. what you said.
10,000. Don't over tighten these things. Tight is tight. Loose is bad. Tight is good. Over tight is worse, because parts will start flying around if you over tighten these. Now, we won't bore you and do in 8 or 7 more. We just did number 1. These valves don't operate in order. It is not the next one is number 8, because John alluded to that first. The firing order of the engine is 1, 3, 4, 2. So these valves go all over the place, and I have never been able to remember which valve I did and didn't do. So I always take a piece of paper, write the numbers on there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and cross off number 1 because we did number 1. So now I have no idea which one comes up next, but we roll the engine a little bit.
Next.
Oh, you see here? This one is going down. Can you see this, Aviva?
Yep.
And which number is this? 1, 2, 3, 4. So number 5 is the one that we have to adjust when this one is all the way down. Yes, Oliver, try. Number 5. Perfect.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Number 5 is good. So number 1 was a little tight. Number 5 is good. We'll let the engine cool down a little bit more, and then when after the Zoom tech session, I'll help John do the other VIX valves. Some mechanics, professional mechanics, don't like to push the engine in the garage because you need a little bit of space and you need a little bit of muscle to do that. So what they say usually is if you start an engine, take the ignition coil off and you click the starter, your engine will always stop with one of the valves down. And you can do the other one, and you just click it a couple times till you see the right one. That's the lazy way of doing it. It'll work, but I always think, how am I sure that it always stops with the valve down? I'd rather just push it around. Right here, we are actually on a lift, which makes it hard to push because we have only a limited runway. Later, I'll put it on the concrete floor. It rolls a little bit easier there. You put it in 4th gear or 3rd gear, and you push it around till all the valves come up. I don't like the method with the switch very much. Hang on, our chat box manager.
One hint, if you take the plugs out, if they're easy to get to, take them out, and it's much easier to put the car forward back.
Great idea. That must be Tom George who said that, or not?
No, that's me.
Oh, all right. The idea is that if you take the plugs out, there's no compression. It makes it a lot easier to push the car around and watch the valves go in. Of course, these plugs, number 1 is hard to get out of this engine anyway. We'll see if we can do it later with the plugs in place, because then we don't have to take them out. But anyhow, that's a good tip. Thank you, Jake. All righty. It is about an hour since we started this thing. We have done the Pertronix, and we have looked at valves. John asked me before the tech session, could we lift the car up? Because apparently this midget is noisy. The rubber in the suspension in the shock absorber, I believe, are dry, and then they start squeaking or cracking noise. And John has some kind of lubricant that he sprays in there to make that sound go away. We can do that next. The other thing that John wants to do that may be difficult to really show on the video is his timing belt, his fan belt is kind of tight, and there's a little bit of a squeaking noise. And the question is the squeaking noise from the engine coming from the fan belt, or is it the generator or the water pump to go with that? We'll do that later. Let's have, we have another 2 minutes to lift this car up and then go underneath, and then you squeak your WD-40. It's not regular WD-40, is it? This is called WD-40 dry loop, PTFE, and I think that's a technical term that is used for silicone spray. So this is probably some silicone-based lubricant that goes in these rubbers, and the rubbers are probably just tied up with bolts and nuts, but this stuff has some creeping abilities. So you spray it on the outside, and the stuff works its way to the inside and lubricates the rubbers so they don't squeak anymore. That's I've never used it. I don't have that problem on my car, but let's see.
I have to do this every now and then.
Okay, let's do it. Let's go up. I am now raising my four-post lift. We had a tech session here, one of the very first tech sessions that we did, way before the pandemic and before Zoom, that we talked about different kind of lifts and the advantages and disadvantages. I have opted for a four-post lift. The lift can actually go higher than my garage is, so if we don't pay attention, we will crack either my garage roof or John's top, and we won't do that. So I'll pay attention to how high we go, so we are sure that no accidents will happen. I always intended to build a limit switch on this lift, so it will stop at the correct height, but I never did. You hear these loud noises, that means that the safety latches of the lift click in. 1, 2, 3, 4, you hear it click, 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 click. And it is, wait a second. Now I lower the lift so it sits in the safety latches, and you are just fine. Now nothing can happen. The power can fail, the hydraulics can fail, everything can fail, and the lift will just stay up there while John is looking at his. Maybe you can see that underneath. This power cord is long enough. Do we need more light?
I think I got the light going on. Where I'm spraying is right up here. Right here. Right here. And when I drive away from here today, the squeak that's been annoying me and overriding Led Zeppelin and Jefferson Airplane
Can't have that.
will go away.
Aviva, can you go to the other side
Yep.
and we do this one and show this? I have lots of light right now.
I can tell you guys that doing this with a lift is a great improvement.
You just need a bigger amplifier on the stereo.
That's probably true.
Crank it up loud.
That's right.
All right.
Okay, John, I'm gonna go up front now.
Okay.
While John does the front, Aviva will follow him. Don't step in the oil.
Okay.
And then I think we are getting towards the end of our tech session. Again, we will have another tech session. Very came a spring tune-up, and then the Cecil Kimber birthday rally. The Cecil Kimber birthday rally, they'll
I
follow
can't.
a pattern like we did last year.
Things are sharp everywhere under here.
The cable that I lit, and then we drive for a couple hours, and we end up in a.
I'm not gonna worry about it because this one
Breeze.
making it crazy. It's the real ones.
And like the rally will have no getting lost, no divorce, guaranteed, no getting lost. Driving instructions, exactly the same as I did last year for the Cecil Timber birthday rally, and the same kind of instructions, the same style as I also used in for the rally in Columbus. If you are think that rallies are difficult because you always get lost and get in arguments with the people on the other chair in your two-seater. Ask some people that have done these two rallies. I can guarantee you that you won't get lost, and I hope you have a good time. So April 1st or 2nd and May 1st or 2nd, spring tune-up and Cecil Kimber birthday rally. Thank you very much for attending our tech session today. Once more, we have John, who is the owner of this car and was the main actor today. We have Oliver here, who helped with little things. We have Jack, who monitored the chat box and the video quality. And then we had Aviva, who was the certified videographer. And then my name is Reinout. Thank you very much.